All right, guys. So I'm going to be talking about military air traffic control and how that relates to civilian air traffic control and where they kind of overlap and where they're different. And to help with this visualization, I'm going to be using beers because I think everyone can relate to that. So, the first thing that we're going to relate to is a light beer, Miller or Bud, whatever you prefer. This is just what I had in my fridge. So this is going to be our civilian air traffic control. And the reason that this is the civilian air traffic control is because it's air traffic control, just like this is beer. However, the military side of things has a little bit extra stuff that they can do. And that's how I came to having that work out in my head. So hopefully it makes sense. So, civilian air traffic control. This still has to do with the 14 CFRs, the AIM, the Air Traffic Controller's Handbook, which was what I have written down here. 7110.65. That's in this bottle. All that is also in this bottle, along with some other things. And before I get into that, I'm going to go over a little bit about military air traffic control. So it used to be in all of the branches of the armed forces. However, with the creation of the Space Force being the 6th, it's now in 5 of the 6 branches. It's an enlisted position for the most part. I know in the Air Force there are airfield operations officers, and they get their tower certification, but after that they'll never go back up in the tower again. So they work up in the young lieutenants. They work up in there in the tower for a while to get certified in it, but they, like I said, after that it's pretty much a wrap. They don't really have anything to do with that. Then they go back down to the ops center and work over there. So if you want to work in military air traffic control, you're going to want to enlist, go through that basic, and then that branch is tech school. And those are the ones that primarily are manning the tower. The airmen and the NCOs or petty officers or sergeants. I don't know what the Army or the Marine Corps is. And then the Air Force goes by AFI 13203, which is something else that we poured into this here bottle. Another thing that's in this bottle, that's not in this bottle, is that in this bottle, military aircraft are allowed to do, or most military aircraft have waivers to do greater than 250 knots under 10,000 feet. And most of them do like 300, 350, because if they weren't doing that speed, then they would be falling out of the sky because they have very small wings as opposed to, they just don't create a whole lot of lift because they have so much thrust, as opposed to a commercial or civilian use aircraft that has humongous wings that can create a lot of lift even at lower speeds. Another thing that military ATC does is that when military aircraft are operating in uncontrolled airspace or in their zones, they can operate with due regard, which means that it's up to those specific aircraft to be in control of their own airspace. So they act as their own air traffic control, essentially. When operating in uncontrolled airspace, they have to be aware of where other civilian aircraft might be that aren't really paying as much attention or don't have the maneuverability they do. So they kind of assume responsibility, or they do assume responsibility for all of that. Another thing that they do is the military assume responsibility for separation of aircraft. MARSA, I think is how you say that, MARSA, yeah, MARSA. And that is what we talked about in class, is when you're flying in like a tight formation, the ATC is going to talk to the leader of that formation and then talk to the whole formation as one single aircraft, pretty much. And you would never see that with anything in Delta or American or whatever commercial airliner, GA aircraft. You wouldn't really ever see them flying in formation. Another thing over here in this bottle is that when commercial or GA aircraft are entering a pattern, they enter like a box pattern with 4 very distinct legs before actually landing. With over here in this bottle, there is what's called a closed pattern, and it is essentially when there's like high number of traffic or there's a ton of people trying to land at one time. It's essentially just like a loop. So you fly over the runway and then you kind of circle on in, land, and then do like a touch and go or a full stop. So that's my project. I'm not the most creative person on the planet, but I do like drinking beer, and I assume most of you do as well. So hopefully you can kind of see the resemblance between civil ATC going in that light beer column and then military ATC going in the actual lager, the non-light beer column, because it has more stuff, and that's how it came to be in my head. If you want to join the military as an air traffic controller, I'd suggest go talking to a recruiter and enlisting, and don't go out of a contract, because then you certainly won't get it. And then I would suggest the Navy or the Air Force. Air Force is going to be off land-based bases, whereas the Navy, you could get an opportunity to go be stationed on an aircraft carrier and launch slap jets off a moving runway, which would be pretty cool. Or join the Air Force as a commissioned officer in airfield operations, get your tower certification, say you did it, and then you'll probably never be up in that tower ever again. So have a good one, guys.